guys, this is Evan with Underhill Bonsai. I have a special guest in the house tonight. I got Mike Lane from Wigert's Nursery. He's been working for Wigert's for about 13 years, working under the steady eye and hand of Eric Wigert. And he's coming here today just to talk bonsai with us and kind of just tell us where it all started, kind of give us some insightful things about how he looks at bonsai, and maybe also talk about some philosophy stuff. Since he's been in the city, we were talking lots of philosophy last night. We're just kind of see if we can get some of that into in a little bit of an interview today. So tell me about yourself, Mike. What's going on?
Well, hey everybody. I'm Mike Lane, like Evan said. I come from Wigert's Bonsai Nursery in North Fort Myers, Florida. Evan mentioned I've been doing bonsai for 13 years. I started out, just like Evan actually, very similar in that I was gifted a bonsai and had a small interest in it and immediately kind of wanted to know more. So I started researching right after I got that first bonsai, and I came across Eric Wigert's Nursery. This was about 2008. And when I went out there, I approached him about possibly apprenticing. I looked at the grounds and I decided, unequivocally that would be what I would do with my life. And I approached him and I said, hey, I'm willing to volunteer my time. Do you guys have an internship program? And he said no. And so I left that situation and I said, okay, well, he said no. So what I did instead, in traditional kind of Japanese fashion, was I took every single class they offered. I showed up every single weekend anyway. I glommed onto him like the most annoying possible person you could. And I just waited until eventually he extended the opportunity to kind of volunteer out there and start working with him on a one-on-one basis. So I'm very lucky that the second I got into bonsai, I was able to kind of get with someone who was doing it professionally, and so I had a very steep kind of upward climb with that. Yeah. So I'm very lucky with that.
And so you say it just took a lot of persistence to get to that point, and I can really relate to that too. If you want to work in bonsai, you have to really be willing to make some sacrifices to get to that point, and know that you're not gonna start from you're not gonna start 100% successful right off the bat. There's a lot of build up to it. Remember we were talking a little earlier, and you were telling me about the beginnings of the Wigerts and how that all started. And when you met Eric, where was he at the time? Whenever you were asking him for apprenticeship and whatnot.
So Eric Wigert at that time, he was still fairly big name. He was still building his name, but he was still traveling pretty extensively. Was very well known, displayed at nationals, and had won the best tropical award already. So I kind of started learning from him in the last maybe 4 or 5 years of his professional kind of traveling and teaching career. Yeah. The nursery at the time was one small little building, a little outhouse as the restroom, a small area in the back to kind of board some customer trees, and then it was just our small little, 1 or 2 acres of actual nursery and the collection trees. So it was really, really small then, and a really, really small staff. It was just Eric, who obviously does the bulk of everything. His worker at the time, Juan, Andrea, his wife, and I would occasionally be helping out on weekends and on any free time I could. So his growth as well has been, exceptional.
So you were really integral in the build-up and process of the Wigerts getting from point A to point B. He was, like you said, he was already had some wind under his sails from winning awards and nationals and stuff, but y'all kind of built like the little community that I see you guys have now. So you have Eric, and you got
Jason.
I think Jason's really cool, and you got Adam occasionally too. Yep. So I'm kind of jealous of y'all's little bonsai family that y'all formed down there.
Well, and that I don't want to stress how integral I was to Eric, because in all honesty, he did it all himself. I really, if anything, he was integral to my growth as a professional. But yeah, the kind of camaraderie that we've built, and that's part of the reason why I love bonsai so much, is really it's like a family. I've spent more time with Eric. He is essentially my brother at this point. We talk to each other like we're brothers. There's days where we're kind of mad at each other like brothers at this point.
Like you're supposed to, yeah.
But he's family. You know, he can really do no wrong. At the end of the day, I'll always kind of have those feelings for him. He's part of our crew, and same with Jason. Jason's actually an older apprentice than me. He's been working with Eric even longer. But unfortunately, you know, he always came with the family and some of that kind of other issues in life that kind of kept him from being at the nursery all the time. But he's been very helpful as well in kind of building the classes and the curriculum. So it's been really cool having all three of us around.
So was there any other inspirations or things that you can amount to how you got into bonsai? Are you a visual artist? Do you like music? Do you do anything like that? Like, did you come from some other strain of artistic?
Well, I've always kind of I've always really liked arts of all kinds. You know, I used to dabble in drawing. I went to Ringling Art Museum in Florida, then took some art classes there when I was even a kid. But then when I was older, in my maybe I think early 20s, 20, 21, something like that, I started taking Kendo and Iaido, which is Japanese fencing. And those martial arts are rooted in the Budos of traditional Japanese culture, so all the warrior arts. And that's where I really kind of learned about the Japanese approach to all things, not just arts, but just the way they approach their work ethic, the way they approach learning new things. And one of the first lessons I learned in Kendo is that in Japan, you'll spend 4 or 5 years without even swinging a stick or a shinai, just working on footwork. And that would be too boring for an American, way too boring. I didn't want to do that in the Kendo classes I was taking, and luckily I didn't have to. But that cemented, that simple kind of idea cemented Japanese culture for me in my mind as a whole, and I just started being drawn to that level of discipline more and more. I'm not a very disciplined guy. You know, I'm very scatterbrained. In my everyday life, I'm very disorganized. And so,
I can relate.
so bonsai is something that I go to because it's hard, because it forces me out of that kind of scatteredness and kind of hones me in and helps me to kind of have some form of discipline and structure to my life. So that's kind of where I come from with the whole Japanese culture thing, and that's why I really, really do harp on the philosophy of it, is because I think that deep down inside, all of us came to bonsai for similar reasons. You know, we didn't just see those trees and think there's plenty of other ways you can design trees. You can go be a topiary artist. But it was something about that Japanese quiet and tranquil approach, that disciplined approach that brought most of us to it. So that's why I really do kind of harp on the philosophy ends of that.
And it's just kind of like you said with the fencing, is with bonsai, you got to learn how to water first before they would let you touch the trees. And that's something that you're telling me, it's like you go to the nursery and you water 6 hours sometimes. And that's a whole process all day because, Eric prefers to hand water all of his specimen trees, which that's a real process.
Yep.
And like you said, it's a different level of discipline that in America it's a little harder to understand that, where it's coming from. But you're kind of running the gambit on doing not touring, but like going around giving classes and stuff too. And was at your demonstration last night. I remember you saying something about Taoism versus Buddhism and the way that it would be approached differently in the styles that you were talking about. Care to elaborate on that a little bit? I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, so I do a lot of research into the whys. I'm a big Socratic method guy. I question everything. Why? So one of my biggest questions is always like, why do we do bonsai? Why did people start doing that? And if you really look at the history of it, it's the religions that kind of guided the hand into why people started taking interest in that. And the religions in Japan that influenced it were Zen Buddhism and Shintoism. So they kind of guided the asymmetry that we're used to seeing, the use of negative spaces, the kind of ratios that we're used to seeing, the cleanliness of the pot and display, the simplicity. That all stems from either the Zen Buddhist approach or some of the Shinto traditions that they've worked into their culture. Well, in China, they're big into the Tao. They're not they do have a lot of Buddhist teachings as well, and that's actually where Buddhism is from. But Taoism is kind of the prominent religion there. And so a lot of the artists that you'll find in China, especially, or even Taiwan, like the guy I was talking about yesterday, he builds his trees on ideas of Taoism. So with the philosophies in mind that come with Taoism. So what I was saying last night is,
I always teach that consistency in design is really, really important. So if you have a curve at the bottom of the trunk, you should have a curve at the top of the trunk. If you have curvy trunk, you should have curvy branches. And same the other way. If you have a straight trunk, straight branches. Well, under Taoist kind of philosophy, too much consistency is just as boring. That's what I was saying, is if it's kind of repeating the same pattern over and over and over, that's just as boring as seeing a straight line. So yin and yang is imperative to Taoism, having that balance. So he likes to work straight sections and moving sections into his trees. And the challenge is to do that and still make something aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, I never heard of incorporating yin and yang into a bonsai design before. That was definitely a different way to look at it. Like you're saying, like there's flaws, but do we just embrace those and just make it for what it is?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really cool way to go about it. I really like that whole thing that you ran on with that. Let's just do some quick little questions about just some like a little bit more fun questions.
Sure.
So just bonsai related, real quick. Favorite species and why?
Well, I have two, and Premna and sea hibiscus. And main reason is when we were first getting into bonsai, tropical guys were kind of laughed at. We weren't taken seriously in bonsai, and to a large degree, we still aren't. But then I started seeing these trees from masters in places like Indonesia, Taiwan, the Indo-Pacific regions, and they had these trees of such high quality that they absolutely competed with the Japanese trees. In some cases, in my opinion, were better. And I asked Eric, I was like, this is insane. I need to go to Japan and I need to learn how to grow better trees. And he said, Mike, you want to grow tropicals, right? I said, yeah. He said, so why would you go to Japan? The best guys growing tropicals are going to be in Malaysia, Taiwan, and those areas. So I started reading those books and found that they used Premnas and sea hibiscus and all these things that we didn't have. And as I was telling you the story last night, is we slowly acquired that material through cuttings just by chance and have grown our own kind of versions of it since then.
Yeah.
And so I've poured the last 3 or 4 years into real study of these two species. Like Premna, I love because it's so versatile. It has leaves that start out, the size maybe 4 to maybe even upwards to 6 inches when they're in the ground, and they reduce down to microscopic. Yeah. So I haven't seen a limit to the reduction that the leaf can get, and it's a stable reduction. The other benefit to it is it's a reduction that anybody can achieve the first time they prune the plant. So you might not get the ultimate reduction the first time you prune it, but if you have leaves like this, the first time you prune your Premna, your leaves will come back like that, And so you can get them down to what they call rice grain, is the kind of the most stable leaf size.
It was like you were saying how like Mame is actually bean.
Right, bean.
And I like how their size comparisons for that. And you were kind of showing pictures of the sea hibiscus too. Mm-hmm. That's a huge interest of you. I didn't know they could go one expression you use like that dinner plate size leaf all the way down to this really, really tiny another kind of rice size leaf there as well. So sea hibiscus, I was talking to Dawn about it too, and she said that picking sea hibiscus for her, she would like throw them in the ground here.
Yeah.
And let them grow for the season and dig them up in the winter.
Sure.
Is that something that you would do with that?
Absolutely, because sea hibiscus has the most aggressive roots that I've yet encountered growing any plant. So sea hibiscus, in reality, I could probably realistically start with a 4-inch cutting that I root in the same year. We're going to just talk this out. 4-inch cutting, I could probably up-pot that to a 1 gallon in 2 months, and then in another 2 months, up-pot that to a 3 gallon. And then in another 2 months, up-pot that to a 5, and then another 2 months to a 10. So their root growth is absolutely insane. You can repot them probably 3 or 4 times a year if they're in bonsai pots.
Wow.
And you almost have to if they're really, really tight. If you want to get growth out of them, and if you want growth out of them, and you're deep into refinement, you're going to have to repot constantly, or double pot, or let those roots get some breathing room if you want that tree to grow at all.
Yeah.
So putting it in the ground for 3 or 4 months and digging it up, absolutely.
It's not going to make it.
It's not going to matter. No, it doesn't care. So I do intense root work on them. I also think that the sea hibiscus, especially in my area where they grow year-round, are the most carefree plant I own. The most carefree plant. They're also what have allowed me to do the most advanced learning because they're most forgiving plant I've ever worked on.
Yeah.
So I was mentioning grafting. My grafting success on sea hibiscus, even on my first few attempts, was in the 90s to 95 percentile, and now is like 99% successful. So the grafting on it was super easy to learn. All these advanced techniques, super easy to learn, and so that's something that I really, really stress for people, even though most people are really, really hesitant to adopt them because they see the big leaves, they see the kind of boring bark. And
reminds me of like the sea grape too.
Yeah.
People are talking about sea grapes, like why would you mess with that? Because that's another one of those big round leaf plants. And I would love to have one here just so I can see what I can get out of it. But
I'm not huge on the sea grape. I'd like to be. I don't think it's the sea grape's fault. I just haven't figured out the horticulture. They're much more difficult to ramify than the sea hibiscus. It's just a way bigger undertaking. And they're slower growing. They're just a harder tree. So can it be done? I've seen some nice sea grapes, but nothing kind of kokufu worthy. Nothing that's like, wow, that can really make a masterpiece level tree.
Do you have a favorite potter that you like? Is there anything you're looking for in particular?
My favorite potter is Coil in Japan. I have a lot of favorite potters from all over the world. But Coil in Japan is probably my favorite just because I think he's an accessible potter for everybody. And it's going to sound silly, but his pots are anywhere from like $80 to $400.
It depends on what.
Depending on what you're going to get. Yeah. But a $400 Coil pot is going to be one of the most beautiful pots you've ever held in your hands. I mean, really, it is. And $400, believe it or not, is still accessible when you're talking about that level of craftsmanship. And I think he will go down as our main potter of our generation because of his prolificness. He's put out a ton of pots. He's put out tons. And just the skill. He's super well known for his Oride glaze. He's like the Oride king. And so I just always get excited when we get new Coil shipments. I always know it's going to be really cool new glazes.
It must be great being down there and just seeing a big box roll in that.
Super exciting. Super exciting.
Unboxing all that. I've seen you guys unbox a lot of really great pots. What's that one particular style where it's glazed on the sides, but it has that really nice painted in the middle?
Oh, that's Satomi. Satomi is an artist in Japan as well, and that's one of his motifs is kind of that glazed and then painted on top.
Frame it up. I like that look. I might have to get one from y'all because for a Shohin tree in particular, I think if I would be correct, a sea hibiscus would look wonderful.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And what I look for, honestly, though, in pots, I'm glad you brought that up. The main thing, if you want your bonsai to be easier to cultivate, depth. Sideways, not so important, but depth. It won't look as cool, obviously. Everybody wants shallower pots to kind of really show that root base, but ease of maintenance sometimes, especially if you're having a busy year. Hey, I know I'm going to be traveling a lot. Pot it into a deeper pot.
That's what I'm telling a lot of people is some people are like, why is it so thin? I'm like, that's the show pot. Right. They'll drop in that show pot for the day, and it goes right back into its little, deeper home pot is what I like to call it.
And even if you do, there are certain species that love shallow pots, so you just got to think the horticulture. A shallow pot's going to be like a big pond, so a shallow pot's going to hold that water still. And so trees that like that, maples will love sitting in that water. Rain trees will love sitting in that shallow pot. Some ficus,
That's what I try to tell people is like bald cypresses. They're like, why do you keep on scaling down on the root mass? It was like the surface area for bald cypress. They love being shallow. Like you said, it's a good point too. It's like the water tension level example you gave where it's laid flat real thin. That water's not going anywhere.
Nope. And then you tip it on its side and it pours out. And so that percolation layer, they call it the perched water table. And that's so important to the horticulture of the plant, that you make sure you have enough depth to break the surface tension of the water, at least on species that don't like staying wet throughout the day. Yeah. So bougainvillea don't like staying wet. Junipers, you'll never see a juniper in Japan potted in a shallow pot. You never see it happen. Yeah. And I shouldn't say never. I shouldn't ever say that. You know what I'm saying? It's not a common practice.
It's something you just like, look for it, but, I mean... It's not, you'll see them every once in a while.
Right, exactly. I don't want to, but I'd like to say never because I think that cements the idea that it's definitely not a common practice.
And it's not so much for, like, for the aesthetics sometimes overshadow. Like I was saying,
Right.
like it's just temporary sometimes, or if maybe they got success with that tree being in that shot.
But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of times where the show pot's not necessarily the pot it's living in all the time. And you should see how my trees live all the time. Like, they're not beautiful. My shohin trees live with those soil collars we mentioned.
Yeah,
building
I thought
up
that was really cool, man.
And
you mentioned that. And then you showed me, well, you showed not me, but the crowd. You showed the pictures of like all these other shohin artists doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, that's common practice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, and you were like, yeah, just pop a collar on there. Having issues? Put a collar on.
Pop your collar.
Having issues? Put it in the bigger pot on the bottom, double pot. But where's the most interesting place that you've been able to actually go teach so far? And or is there like a little good story attached to it? You know?
Oh man. No, there's been a lot. I really have enjoyed my time traveling around. Honestly, maybe probably the most fun. I don't know. I really enjoyed doing the Lone Star Federation thing. That was the state show in Longview a few years ago, and I just really enjoyed that vibe. I really enjoyed how many people were there. I enjoyed kind of having all the professionals come together and all the different clubs come together. But one of my favorite parts of doing this is going to all the cities. So I've had a blast in every place I've gone. I was telling you about Dallas, had a blast going there. This has been really, really fun, coming to New Orleans. Austin was really, really cool. But probably my favorite, I guess, if you're going to really pin me down, Mexico was really, really cool. Mexico, I got to meet a lot of my heroes that have inspired me since. Minlo, the first time I got to meet him. Mauro, got to meet him there. Enrique Castellano, Nacho Marin. You know, it was just a powerhouse of talent, and I got to spend, I think, like 4 days there, just taking workshops and talking with these guys and listening to them. And, you know, you're surrounded by beautiful tropical Mexico, so the backdrop was awesome, too. And so that was probably the coolest bonsai trip so far. But, you know, hoping for more. Maybe Fiji next. Fiji Bonsai Club, here I come. I'm hoping.
Yeah. And it's cool that you talk about Mexico. Like I've been keeping with Nacho, and on his Facebook feed, it's always just amazing. Like he's doing some good work out there. He does he's doing some shohin stuff that they say he's one of the more refined, smaller shohin artists out there. And I didn't realize that Mexico was coming up like that. And I mean, there's a lot of tropical stuff down there for them to work with.
Well, they're just, you know, and I don't know this. I can't like elaborate huge on the whole culture, but I'll say when we went to what was called the FILAT convention. So that was the Latin American Bonsai Association, basically just getting all these clubs together from all the Latin American countries. And I'll tell you, they're crazy about bonsai. They love it, love it, love it, love it. And their material that they have is insane. The Yamadori is insane. The trees that they have available, and extreme environments too. So, the talent and the desire to do bonsai down there, arguably it was a little more than even here. You know, they were really, really into it. So, I can see how the talent's growing down there in all those countries. Venezuela, Argentina is real big. They're doing some great junipers in Brazil now. You know, this is how silly I am, and I'm constantly relearning geography. It took me a long time to realize that Brazil is so big that some parts are cold. You know?
Oh yeah, so they're pushed upwards.
Right.
I guess, yeah. And
yeah. So they're like, I'm seeing these junipers, and I'm like, how are they growing those junipers in Brazil? How? What? And that's how, because I don't understand geography. So I'm constantly learning. That's what this is all about.
So, I mean, what's the future look like? Do you think, as far as for you and also for the bonsai of America? I mean, that's still young here from what I can kind of attest to. So, what are you seeing on your end?
I think bonsai on a whole in America and on a world stage is growing at an unprecedented rate. I think that the one biggest use, the biggest benefit I see for Facebook, for the internet, for social media, for all of that, is the sharing of ideas. I have grown a large portion of my growth as an artist and as a grower has been from talking to people on other sides of the planet. It really has. It's been these, not even lessons, it's literally just been conversations, talking to growers about how and why. And you've never been able to do that. It's never been more accessible than it has now. I can watch feeds of guys working on their nursery in Japan and at least keep up with their posts about what work they're doing and when and why. And so it is the dawn of information, or the age of information. And in a lot of ways that's been bad for us, but this is one of the few ways where it has really, really been good for us, and we can use it to our advantage. And so the future, I think, is bright for all of us. I think that the U.S. is coming to its pinnacle as far as its bonsai identity. I think people are recognizing us for having some of the best collected material, best Yamadori. The talent that we're building up in America is huge as well. So I think the future is bright for everybody. I think if we can just kind of focus on trees and growing trees and on our mutual interests, then everything will be okay.
Yeah. This is Evan with Underhill Bonsai. That was a nice little interview there with Mike Lane. Very interesting, picking his brain, seeing how he feels about the state of bonsai, his influences, and all the other stuff that's going on. So,
thanks, guys, for having me. Thank you to Underhill Bonsai Nursery, Evan, for interviewing me, and thank you to the Greater New Orleans Bonsai Society and the Louisiana Bonsai Society for having me out. I hope you guys have a great day and keep growing your trees.